My sister abandoned her infant on my doorstep and disappeared. Years later, my parents dragged me into court claiming I stole their grandkid. But the judge read my private file and went cold. Can you even imagine a world where your own sister abandons her baby on your doorstep, and then, a decade later, backed by the very parents who told you that child was your burden, she tries to sue you for custody? My blood still runs cold thinking about it. They had no idea what I was about to unleash in that courtroom. This isn't just about a legal battle. It's about what happens when your own blood betrays you in the cruelest way, and how you fight, like a mother lion, for the child you love with every fiber of your being. This is the story of how I fought for the daughter of my heart, and let me tell you, it taught me everything I needed to know about what true family really means. Before Clara burst into my life, everything felt perfect. I was 24, a pediatric nurse at Memorial Hospital, fresh off a promotion to head nurse on my floor. My boyfriend, David, an architect I'd met through friends, and I were even talking about moving in together. Life, was just following this beautiful, imagined timeline I had in my head. Then, a rainy Tuesday night in October shattered it all. I'd just gotten home from a brutal 12-hour shift, kicked off my shoes, and basically melted onto the couch with a glass of wine and some takeout. Around 9:30, the doorbell rang. I almost ignored it, figured it was just a package. But when it rang again, more insistently, I reluctantly dragged myself up. What I found on my welcome mat, it absolutely blew my world apart. A car seat sat there, covered with a thin blanket, shielding it from the pouring rain. When I pulled back the blanket, I gasped. A tiny baby girl, maybe 3 months old, with rosy cheeks and a wisp of dark hair, just like my sister, Chloe. Tucked into the side of the car seat was a folded note. I recognized Chloe's messy handwriting immediately. Her name is Clara. I can't do this. Take care of her. I'm sorry. 7 words. 7 words that vaporized my entire existence. I looked up and down the street. Nothing. I called Chloe's cell straight to voicemail. My hands were shaking so hard as I brought Clara inside. She was sleeping peacefully, utterly unaware her mother had just abandoned her. My first call after trying Chloe again was to my parents. Their response, it still makes my stomach churn, even now. We told her not to have that baby, my mother, Eleanor, said, her voice like ice. She made her choice, and now she's running away from it. Typical Chloe. But what am I supposed to do? I asked, panic rising in my throat, choking me. I can't just keep a baby. I don't know anything about caring for an infant. She's your burden now, my father, Richard, stated, his voice firm, completely unwavering. We're done cleaning up after Chloe. We're too old for this. She left her with me. Not you. I argued, desperation clinging to every word. She's your granddaughter. And we never asked to be grandparents, my mother shot back. Especially not to the child of whatever random man Chloe hooked up with. They hung up shortly after, refusing to come over, refusing any help whatsoever. I sat on my couch, staring at the tiny, sleeping baby, completely overwhelmed, utterly numb. Clara woke up soon after, her face scrunching into a hungry cry that sent me into a full-blown panic. I had nothing. No formula, no diapers, nothing for a baby in my entire apartment. I called David, hoping he would, bring some supplies. His reaction was almost as shocking as my parents'. A baby? Your sister just dumped her kid on you. That's insane, Maya. You need to call social services. I can't just call social services in the middle of the night. I pleaded, my voice breaking. She's my niece. Please, just go to the 24-hour store and get some formula and diapers. This isn't our problem, he said firmly. This is exactly the kind of drama your sister always creates. don't get pulled into it. I hung up. Alone. Completely and utterly alone. I carefully placed Clara back in her car seat and drove to the nearest 24-hour supermarket. I wandered the baby aisles in my scrubs, frantically Googling what kind of formula to buy. What size diapers? A kind elderly woman working the night shift, her eyes full of genuine concern, helped me put together the essentials after I vaguely explained I was suddenly caring for my niece. That first night was a blur of crying, formula temperature checks, and diaper changes. I called into work the next morning to request emergency family leave, something I'd never done in my 5 years at the hospital. My supervisor, knowing my reliable history, granted me 2 weeks without question. I filed a police report, but the officers weren't particularly concerned. No crime in a mother leaving her child with a family member, they'd explained. Chloe wasn't missing. She had chosen to leave. They took my info, but warned me not to expect much. I also called a family lawyer who explained I'd need to file for temporary guardianship, a process that would take time, and a lot of money. Those first days were a fog of conflicting emotions. I was absolutely furious at Chloe for putting me in this impossible position, for abandoning her child, for disappearing without a word. But every single time I looked at Clara, at her tiny fingers, her trusting eyes, my anger, it just melted into a fierce, protective love. She was innocent in all of this, completely dependent on someone to care for her. That first night, I made a makeshift crib from a drawer lined with blankets and slept on the couch beside her, waking every few hours to her hungry cries. As I fed her in the quiet darkness, watching her tiny face relax in contentment, I whispered a promise I would keep for the next decade. I don't know what happened with your mom, little one, but I'm here now. I'll figure this out. You are safe with me. Within 2 weeks, it was crystal clear. Chloe wasn't coming back. I had to make serious changes. My 1-bedroom apartment was just too small. I found a 2-bedroom closer to the hospital, stretching my budget to its absolute breaking point. Moving costs, baby furniture, reduced work hours, they hit my savings hard, but I was determined to create stability for Clara. Becoming an instant mother was nothing like I'd imagined. No time to prepare, no books, no nursery. I learned through pure necessity, often calling the pediatric nurses I worked with for advice. My nursing background helped with the medical aspects, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the emotional and logistical challenges of suddenly parenting alone. Work became a complicated balancing act. I reduced my hours, switched to mostly day shifts, arranging childcare with a wonderful woman named Elena, who ran a small daycare. The career advancement I'd been working toward was put on indefinite hold. My supervisor was understanding, but made it clear my track to management would be delayed. The legal process for temporary guardianship was extensive and expensive. Hours of paperwork, meetings with court-appointed evaluators, hearings without Chloe to formally transfer custody. Everything took twice as long. I was fingerprinted, my home inspected, my entire life scrutinized to see if I was fit to care for my own niece. While all this was happening, my relationship with David crumbled. His initial reluctance turned into bitter resentment. I didn't sign up to date a single mom, he said during one of our increasingly frequent arguments. We had plans, Maya. Travel, buying a house, building our careers. How does any of that happen now? Life happens, I told him, my voice tight. Plans change. What was I supposed to do? Put her in foster care. Maybe that would have been better for everyone, he muttered. That was it. End of story. I packed up his few things and told him not to contact me again. Losing him hurt, but nowhere near as much as the suggestion that I should have abandoned Clara to the system. His true character had revealed itself, and I was better off knowing. My parents made rare appearances during that first year, always brief, always critical. My mother, Eleanor, would come over, look around my apartment with thinly veiled disapproval, making comments about how tired I looked or how cluttered the space was. She'd hold Clara awkwardly, as if she might break. Never, ever offering to change a diaper or give her a bottle. "You're letting her cry too much," she'd say. "But I suppose you don't know any better." My father, Richard, rarely engaged with Clara at all, keeping his distance. He'd stand in the doorway, arms crossed, watching as if the whole scene was a disaster he was being forced to witness. "Has anyone heard from Chloe?" he'd ask, his voice tight with anger. It was the only time he showed any emotion about the situation. "If I had heard from Chloe, you'd be the first to know," I'd reply, a lie. But it was clear they had written off both their daughters and their granddaughter in one phone call. Thankfully, I found support elsewhere. My coworkers organized a baby shower, gifting me essentials. My next-door neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, became a surrogate grandmother, offering to watch Clara and teaching me her secret technique for soothing colicky babies. Around month 3, I hired a private investigator with money I couldn't really spare. He managed to track down information suggesting Chloe had traveled to California, working at a restaurant in San Diego for a few weeks. Then the trail went cold again. It was both a relief and a heartbreak to know she was alive but choosing to stay away. Despite the chaos, Clara thrived. She rolled over, sat up, crawled, and spoke her first word, Nana. Each milestone was celebrated with photos and videos stored carefully for a future where she might want to know about her early life. I created a memory box for these mementos, along with a few items she'd arrived with, including Chloe's note. Clara's first birthday was nothing like the elaborate parties my friends threw for their children. We couldn't afford a fancy celebration, but I invited the small circle of people who had supported us. Mrs. Rodriguez made a beautiful cake. My friend from work brought balloons, and Clara smashed frosting all over her face while everyone cheered. My parents declined, claiming a prior commitment. As I tucked Clara into bed that night, now in a proper crib in her own room, decorated with second-hand furniture and wall decals I'd found on sale, I realized something profound. Despite all the hardship, stress, and sacrifice, I could no longer imagine my life without her. In just 1 year, this child who had arrived as a responsibility had become the center of my world. I wasn't just caring for her out of obligation anymore. I loved her fiercely, completely, as if she had been mine from the beginning. "Happy birthday, sweet girl," I whispered, kissing her forehead. "We made it through our first year together. Here's to many more." 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. Clara started kindergarten, a milestone that filled me with equal parts pride and nostalgia for her baby days. Our morning routine was well established, a choreographed dance of breakfast, outfit selection, and backpack checking. Clara was an early riser, often waking me by climbing into my bed with a stuffed bunny and a steady stream of questions. "Nana, is today library day? Can I wear my star shoes? Will you make pancakes with blueberry smiles?" I had transitioned to a school nurse position, different from Clara's school, to maintain boundaries. The job came with family-friendly hours and holidays off, a crucial change that allowed me to be more present for her. My career ambitions had shifted from climbing the hospital hierarchy to finding stability and balance for our little family of 2. Our apartment had become a true home, walls covered with Clara's artwork and photographs. Her personality had blossomed into something remarkable: curiosity, resilience, creativity. She loved building elaborate worlds with blocks, creating stories, and asking questions that sometimes left me searching for appropriate answers. We had our special traditions. Friday movie nights with homemade popcorn and pillow forts. Sunday mornings at the local park. These simple rituals created the stability children crave, especially those who have experienced early disruption. As Clara grew older, her questions about her origins became more frequent. I had always been truthful with her, explaining that her mother was my sister, who hadn't been ready to be a mommy when Clara was born. "Where is she now?" Clara would ask, her eyes wide. I don't know exactly, I'd answer honestly. But she made sure you came to me because she knew I would love you very much. Will she ever come back? I don't know that either, sweetheart. But no matter what, you and I are family. To help her understand, I created a storybook explaining how families come in all shapes and sizes. Some kids live with grandparents, some with 2 moms or 2 dads, some with just one parent, and some, like Clara, with an aunt who loves them more than anything in the world. My parents maintained their distance, visiting perhaps 3 or 4 times a year, always with the same tension and criticism. My mother would bring gifts, often inappropriate for Clara's age, demonstrating how little she paid attention. She should be in ballet by now, she'd comment, bringing yet another tutu for a child who preferred dinosaurs and building blocks. All the girls in the neighborhood are taking lessons. My father remained emotionally unavailable. Clara, sensitive and perceptive, would become quieter during their visits. Her natural exuberance dimmed by their lack of warmth. My personal life remained largely on hold. Dating as a single mother was complicated enough, but dating in my unique situation seemed nearly impossible. The few promising men would inevitably pull back when they understood the full picture of my commitment to Clara. I chose to focus on her needs rather than pursue relationships that might bring more instability. Our support network continued to grow. I joined a single parents group, finding solidarity and friendship. Clara formed close bonds with the children of my friends from work, creating a chosen family that celebrated holidays and milestones with us. Financial stability remained a constant struggle. I took on a second job doing telehealth nursing consultations 2 evenings a week after Clara was asleep to build a college fund for her future. It meant less sleep, careful budgeting, but the growing savings account gave me peace of mind. After years of careful saving, we took our first real vacation when Clara was 6, a trip to Disney World that she still talked about years later. Watching her face light up as she met her favorite characters made every extra shift and budgetary sacrifice worthwhile. Clara's artistic talents began to emerge around this time. Her kindergarten teacher noted her unusual attention to detail, and I encouraged this interest with art supplies and museum visits. She'd spend hours creating elaborate pictures of our adventures, real and imagined, that captured the special bond between us. As I approached the 5-year anniversary of Clara's arrival, I reflected on how completely my existence had transformed. My apartment was filled with children's books instead of novels. My refrigerator displayed spelling tests instead of social invitations, and my schedule revolved around school events and playdates. None of it resembled the life I'd planned. Yet, I couldn't imagine wanting anything different. In a box under my bed, I kept letters I'd written to Chloe over the years, but never sent. Having no address, they documented Clara's milestones, her funny sayings, her growing personality, things a mother might want to know. Sometimes I wondered if Chloe ever thought about the daughter she'd left behind, if she regretted her decision. "Look what I made for you, Nana." Clara called, interrupting my thoughts, running into the kitchen, holding a carefully drawn picture of 2 figures, one tall and one small, surrounded by a large red heart. "That's beautiful, sweetie," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Is that us?" "Yes. That's you and me inside a heart because we're a heart family, not a blood family. Miss Peterson told us that some families are made from blood and some are made from heart. And heart families are just as real." "Miss Peterson is very wise," I said, blinking back tears. "We are definitely a heart family. And that's the best kind," Clara declared with the absolute certainty only a 5-year-old can possess. I hung the picture on the refrigerator, a visual reminder of what we had built together out of the most unexpected beginning. For more years passed in a comfortable rhythm. Clara was 9, thriving in 4th grade with good friends and a passion for both art and science. She had grown into a thoughtful, resilient child with my sister's artistic talent, but a steadiness of character that was entirely her own. Then the phone call came. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening. As I was helping Clara with her science project about the solar system, an unknown number flashed on my screen. I almost ignored it, assuming it was a telemarketer, but some instinct, some gut feeling, made me answer. "Hello, Maya." The voice was hesitant, familiar, yet strange after so many years. "It's Chloe." My hand tightened on the phone, my knuckles white. I stepped quickly into my bedroom, away from Clara's curious eyes. "Chloe. Where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I'm actually in town. I was hoping we could meet." Her voice sounded steadier than I remembered, more mature. We arranged to meet at a cafe the next day while Clara was at school. I spent the night alternating between anxiety, anger, and a strange sense of relief that she was alive and well. I told Clara I had a doctor's appointment, hating the small lie, but knowing I needed to understand Chloe's situation before involving her daughter. The woman who walked into the cafe was almost unrecognizable from the troubled sister I remembered. Chloe was 32 now. Her hair styled in a sophisticated bob, not the wild curls of her youth. She wore a tailored blazer and carried an expensive-looking handbag. She looked healthy, put together, a world away from the overwhelmed young mother who had left her baby on my doorstep a decade ago. "You look good," she said as she sat down across from me. "Really good." "You too," I replied, studying her face for traces of the sister I had once been close to. "You seem well." "I am," she said, twisting her hands nervously despite her composed appearance. "I've been sober for 7 years now. I completed rehab, got my degree in graphic design, and I'm married to a wonderful man named Ethan." She proceeded to tell me a story of recovery and redemption. After leaving Clara with me, she had spiraled further into drug addiction, living on the streets of San Diego for a time before hitting rock bottom and checking herself into rehabilitation. There, she met Ethan, a counselor, and after completing her program and maintaining sobriety, they had eventually married. They had no children of their own. "I wasn't fit to be a mother then," she admitted. "I was using heavily during my pregnancy, though I tried to stop. I was terrified Clara would have health problems because of me. When she seemed okay, I thought I could handle it. But the postpartum depression hit hard, and I went back to using. The night I brought her to you, I had been using for days. I knew I was going to hurt her if I kept her. Leaving her with you was the only good decision I made during that time." I showed her photos on my phone of the childhood she had missed. Clara's first steps. First day of preschool, kindergarten graduation, birthday parties, Halloween costumes, Christmas mornings. Chloe wiped away tears as she swiped through the evidence of a decade of absence. "She's beautiful," she whispered. "So beautiful and clearly happy. You've done an amazing job, Maya." My emotions were chaotic, a mixture of the old anger at her abandonment and a new, cautious hope that perhaps Clara could have a relationship with her birth mother after all. We talked for hours, carefully navigating a decade of separation and the complex reality of our situation. "I'd like to meet her," Chloe said finally. "If you think that would be okay." After careful consideration and consultation with a child psychologist, I arranged the first meeting between Chloe and Clara. I prepared Clara by explaining that my sister, her birth mother, had been very sick when Clara was a baby, but was better now and wanted to meet her. I emphasized that nothing would change about our life together, but that Chloe might become a part of our extended family, like an aunt. The meeting took place at a neutral location, a children's museum, where Clara could feel comfortable and engaged. Clara was uncharacteristically shy, clinging to my hand as Chloe approached with a nervous smile. "Hello, Clara," Chloe said softly. "I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time." "Hi," Clara replied, half hiding behind me. "Nana says you're her sister." "That's right. And I'm also your birth mother, which means you grew in my tummy before you were born." Clara nodded solemnly. But Nana is my real mom because she takes care of me and loves me and helps me with homework and makes me soup when I'm sick. Chloe's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled bravely. That's absolutely right. You are very lucky to have such a wonderful mom. Over the following months, Chloe became a cautious presence in our lives. We established a routine of supervised visits, gradually increasing the time as Clara became more comfortable. Chloe was respectful of boundaries, never pushing for more than I was comfortable with, always deferring to my parenting decisions. She brought thoughtful gifts that showed she was paying attention to Clara's interests. After about 6 months of this careful dance, Chloe dropped a bombshell. She and Ethan were moving permanently to our city. She had accepted a job at a local design firm, and they had purchased a house just 20 minutes from our apartment. We want to be closer to Clara, she explained over coffee, to be a regular part of her life. Warning bells rang in my head, but I pushed aside my concerns. This could be positive for Clara, I reasoned, having her birth mother in her life in a healthy way. I invited Chloe and Ethan for dinner, wanting to get to know the man who would be around my niece. The dinner went well on the surface. Ethan was charming and engaging, asking Clara about school and complimenting my cooking. Yet something felt off about his two perfect responses and the way he watched Chloe carefully as she spoke, as if monitoring her. The other shoe dropped during dessert. We've been thinking, Chloe said, glancing at Ethan for encouragement. That now that we're settled and financially stable, I would like to be Clara's mother again. Legally, I mean. My fork clattered against my plate. What exactly are you saying? We think it would be best for Clara to live with us, Ethan interjected smoothly. Of course, you would have liberal visitation. You've done an amazing job raising her, Maya, and no one can take that away from you. But a child belongs with her mother when possible. I am her mother, I said, my voice low to avoid alerting Clara, who was showing Ethan her art supplies in the living room. I have been her mother for 10 years while you were nowhere to be found. Biologically, I am her mother, Chloe countered. And I'm in a much better position now to provide for her. You're in a tiny apartment, working 2 jobs. We have a house with a yard and a top school district. Ethan makes 6 figures. She could have her own room, a college fund, vacations, everything children should have. She already has everything she needs, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady, including stability and security with the only parent she has ever known. The conversation ended uneasily with promises to discuss it further. After they left, I sat in stunned silence, processing the threat to everything I had built with Clara. I had naively believed Chloe wanted to be a supportive presence, not to replace me entirely. The situation deteriorated further when my parents unexpectedly contacted me, something they rarely did. They requested Sunday dinner at their house, including Clara. When we arrived, Chloe and Ethan were already there, looking comfortable in my childhood home. Your sister has told us everything, my father, Richard, said after an uncomfortable meal, where my mother, Eleanor, fussed over Chloe as if she was the prodigal daughter returned in glory. About her recovery, her marriage, her desire to be a proper mother to Clara. She has turned her life around, my mother added. We're so proud of her. You've been in contact with her. For how long? I asked, pieces suddenly falling into place with a sickening thud. My parents exchanged glances. We reconnected about 3 years ago, my father admitted. Chloe reached out when she completed her rehabilitation program. 3 years. I repeated numbly. You've known where she was for 3 years and never told me. She asked us not to, my mother said defensively. She wanted to get herself together first. And now that she has, my father continued, we think it makes sense for Clara to be with her real mother. Chloe and Ethan can provide a traditional family environment with 2 parents. You've done your part, Maya, but it's time to do what's best for Clara. Blood is blood, my mother added, echoing the sentiment from our family dinner. She deserves to be with her actual mother. The betrayal cut deep. Not only had Chloe returned with the intention of taking Clara from me, but my parents had apparently been supporting this plan, maintaining contact with Chloe for years while continuing their cold, critical visits to us. "We're leaving," I said, standing abruptly and reaching for Clara's hand. "Clara, put on your coat, please." "But we haven't had dessert," Clara protested, confused by the tension she clearly sensed. "We'll get ice cream on the way home," I promised, helping her with her coat while pointedly avoiding eye contact with my family. As we drove home, Clara was uncharacteristically quiet, staring out the window. "Nana," she finally said in a small voice, "Grandma said I might go live with Aunt Chloe and Uncle Ethan. Is that true?" My heart broke at the anxiety in her voice. "No, sweetie. You live with me. That is your home." "But she said Aunt Chloe is my real mom, and I should be with her." I pulled the car over, unbuckled my seatbelt, and turned to face her fully. "Listen to me, Clara. You and I are family. We have been since the day you came to me. Nothing is going to change that. I promise you." Her bottom lip trembled. "Cross your heart." "Cross my heart," I said firmly, making the gesture that had sealed all our important promises since she was tiny. "No one is going to take you away from me." That night, after Clara finally fell asleep, I found her in the throes of a nightmare, calling out, "No, no, don't take me." As I held her, soothing her back to peaceful slumber, a cold determination settled in my chest. I would fight with everything I had to keep my promise to her. The certified letter arrived 3 weeks later, its formal language disguising the bomb it contained. Chloe was petitioning for restoration of her parental rights and custody of Clara. The family court date was set for 30 days later. Each legal term felt like a physical blow: biological parent, termination of guardianship, best interests of the minor child, home study, psychological evaluation. The words swam before my eyes as I realized the life we had built together could potentially be dismantled by a judge who knew nothing about our bond, our daily rhythms, our love. I emptied my savings account and took out a loan to pay the retainer for Sarah Davies, an attorney specializing in family law whom a colleague had recommended. Her office was warm but professional, with children's books and toys in the corner, suggesting she understood the human stakes of her work. "I won't sugarcoat this," Sarah said after reviewing my case. "Biological parents have strong rights in our legal system, even ones who have been absent. However, the length of time you have been Clara's caregiver and the circumstances of the abandonment work in your favor. 10 years is practically Clara's entire life, and judges are reluctant to disrupt a child's stable environment without compelling reasons. We developed a strategy focusing on documenting the reality of our life together. I gathered school records showing my consistent attendance at parent-teacher conferences and involvement in Clara's education. I collected medical records demonstrating my attentive care through childhood illnesses and regular checkups. I requested letters from Clara's teachers, our neighbors, and friends who could attest to the loving home we had created. When the initial legal documents from Chloe's attorney arrived, I discovered something that sent me reeling. My parents had provided affidavits supporting Chloe's petition, making claims that stunned me with their dishonesty. According to my mother's statement, I had manipulated the temporary situation to alienate Clara from her biological mother and extended family. My father claimed I had refused numerous requests for family visitation and deliberately kept Clara separate from family traditions and gatherings. Both portrayed Chloe as a young mother who had made a mistake and deserved a second chance with her daughter. This is completely false. I told Sarah, my hands shaking. They visited only when it suited them, showed minimal interest in Clara, and were critical of me at every turn. They knew where Chloe was for years and never told me. Now they're painting me as some kind of villain who stole her child. Family custody battles often bring out the worst in people, Sarah said gently. The good news is that these statements can be refuted. We can document the actual frequency of their visits and communication. Do you have text messages, emails, or other records of your interactions with your parents over the years? I did. I had saved emails and texts out of habit, born from dealing with their unpredictable behavior, documenting cancelled visits and critical comments. I had never imagined they would be evidence in a custody battle. The stress began to affect Clara. She started having trouble sleeping, became clingy before school, and her normally excellent grades began to slip. Her teacher called to report that Clara had burst into tears during class when another child talked about moving to a new house. I arranged for her to see a child psychologist specializing in family transitions, trying to help her process her fears while shielding her from the worst of the legal battle. Clara exhibits significant anxiety about potential separation from her primary caregiver, the psychologist reported. She associates her birth mother and that side of the family with insecurity and fear of abandonment. Forcing a custody change at this point could result in significant emotional trauma. I rehired the private investigator who had helped me years before, asking him to look into Chloe and Ethan's claims about their stable, perfect life. His initial findings were concerning. While Chloe did appear to have maintained sobriety, Ethan had a history that had not been disclosed, including a domestic violence charge from a previous relationship that had been dismissed under unclear circumstances. The discovery process was grueling. Chloe's attorney requested extensive documentation of my finances, work history, and even my dating life, attempting to paint me as too busy, too poor, or too distracted to properly care for Clara. Each demand felt like an invasion, forcing me to justify the life we had built together to strangers who knew nothing about our daily happiness. Explaining the court case to Clara was one of the hardest conversations of my life. I had promised her she would stay with me, and now I had to prepare her for the possibility, however remote, that a judge might decide otherwise. The judge has to listen to everyone and make a decision about what's best for you, I explained, sitting with her on the edge of her bed. Aunt Chloe wants you to live with her and Uncle Ethan, and I want you to continue living with me. The judge will decide. But I want to stay with you, Clara said, her eyes filling with tears. Why does a judge get to choose my mom? I already chose you. I know, sweetheart, I said, pulling her close. And I chose you, too. We're going to tell the judge that, and I will do everything I can to make sure we stay together. Will I have to talk to the judge? She asked, fear evident in her voice. Maybe, I answered honestly. But if you do, I'll be right there with you. And you just have to tell the truth about how you feel. I'm scared, she whispered. Me, too, I admitted. But being scared is okay. Sometimes we'll be scared together, and we'll get through this together. Just like we've gotten through everything else. As the court date approached, I tried to maintain as much normalcy as possible for Clara's sake. We kept our Friday movie nights and Sunday park visits. I helped with homework, attended her art show at school, and pretended everything was fine while my insides twisted with anxiety about our future. The timing of Chloe's return after exactly 10 years seemed suspicious, a detail that nagged at me. I mentioned it to the private investigator. That does seem convenient, he agreed. Let me look into whether anything changes legally at the 10-year mark. 2 days later, he called with urgency in his voice. We need to meet. I found something significant. He arrived at my apartment with a folder of documents, waiting until Clara was engrossed in a television show before spreading them on my kitchen table. Your sister's husband has been systematically searching for your niece's biological father, he explained, pointing to social media searches and database inquiries. Based on the timing and nature of the searches, it appears they located him approximately 6 months ago, just before they contacted you. Why would they be looking for Clara's father? Chloe never even told me who he was. Because of this, he said, pointing to another document. The man they identified, Ethan Cooper, inherited a significant sum from his grandfather last year. We're talking multiple millions. If Chloe regains custody of Clara and establishes paternity, she could potentially claim substantial child support retroactively, plus secure future financial benefits for Clara that they would control as her guardians. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Chloe's sudden interest in motherhood after 10 years of absence. The perfectly timed reappearance, the convenient redemption story, the expensive lawyer. It wasn't about wanting Clara back at all. It was about money. Can you document all of this? I asked, my voice steady, despite the rage building inside me. Already done, he replied, tapping the folder. Along with evidence contradicting several claims in their court filings, Ethan's business is actually struggling, not thriving as they claimed. Their perfect house is mortgaged to the hilt. And most importantly, I have documented evidence of your parents' knowledge of Chloe's whereabouts for years, directly contradicting their sworn statements. I compiled all the evidence into a sealed folder that would become the centerpiece of our case. When Sarah reviewed it, her professional demeanor cracked slightly. This changes everything, she said. The judge needs to see this. The county courthouse was an imposing building of stone and glass, its formal atmosphere immediately intimidating. I wore my most professional outfit, a navy blue suit I had purchased specifically for this day, wanting to project stability and confidence. Clara was staying with her art teacher, a kind woman who had volunteered to keep her occupied during the proceedings to spare her the tension. Chloe and Ethan sat at the table across the aisle, both immaculately dressed. Chloe in a conservative floral dress that suggested maternal warmth. Ethan in a tailored suit that spoke of financial success. My parents sat directly behind them, my mother clutching her purse nervously, my father staring straight ahead, his jaw set in the expression I had known since childhood meant his mind was made up. Judge Albright, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and reading glasses perched on her nose, called the court to order. She explained that this was a hearing to determine custody of Clara Davis, now 10 years old, and outlined the factors she would consider. The court's primary concern is the best interest of the child, she stated firmly. We will hear testimony from all parties involved and review the evidence presented. I expect complete honesty and respect for these proceedings. Chloe testified first, telling a compelling story of youthful mistakes, hard-won sobriety, and maternal longing. She described her marriage to Ethan as loving and stable, their home as spacious and child-friendly, their finances as more than adequate to provide Clara with advantages I could never offer. She wept at appropriate moments, describing her regret at missing years of Clara's life and her desire to make up for lost time. I made a terrible mistake when I was young and addicted, she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. But I have worked so hard to become someone worthy of being Clara's mother. I want to give her the life she deserves with a mother and father who can provide everything she needs. Ethan followed with equally polished testimony, describing their 4-bedroom house with a backyard perfect for a child, the excellent school district they had specifically chosen with Clara in mind, and his financial ability to ensure she would never want for anything. He spoke of college funds already established, family vacations planned, and his desire to be the father figure Clara had lacked. We can offer Clara stability, a traditional family environment, and opportunities that simply are not possible in her current situation, he said confidently. While we respect what Maya has done, we believe Clara belongs with her mother and in our home. My parents testified next, both reinforcing the narrative Chloe had constructed. My mother spoke of her joy at Chloe's recovery and her belief that Clara would benefit from a relationship with her real mother. She claimed I had been resistant to family gatherings and had deliberately kept Clara separate from them. Maya has always been stubborn, she said with a sigh that suggested long-suffering patience. Once she decided Clara was hers, she shut out the rest of the family. We tried to be involved, but she made it so difficult. My father's testimony was briefer, but equally damaging. He described Chloe as reformed and deserving of a second chance while characterizing me as controlling and unwilling to acknowledge Clara's need for her biological mother. Blood is blood, he stated, echoing the sentiment from our family dinner. A child belongs with her real mother when that is possible. Maya has done her duty, but it's time for Clara to be with Chloe. Their testimonies felt like physical blows. Each false statement and twisted truth, another wound from the people who should have supported me. I clutched my hands in my lap to stop them from shaking, focusing on maintaining my composure for Clara's sake. Chloe's attorney, an expensive-looking man in a designer suit, then questioned me aggressively about my finances, my work schedule, and my personal life, attempting to portray me as barely managing and unable to provide the advantages Chloe and Ethan could offer. "Is it not true that you work 2 jobs to make ends meet?" he asked. "I work as a school nurse full-time and do telehealth consultations some evenings after Clara is asleep to build her college fund," I corrected. "And you live in a 2-bedroom apartment rather than a house?" "Yes, in a neighborhood Clara knows well, close to her school and friends." "Have you maintained any serious relationship since becoming Clara's guardian?" "My primary focus has been providing stability for Clara rather than dating," I replied. The questioning continued in this vein, designed to make my loving, stable home seem inadequate compared to the materially advantaged one Chloe was offering. I answered truthfully but felt the implied judgment in each question. The suggestion that love and consistency were somehow less important than square footage and vacation plans. When my turn to present evidence came, the energy in the courtroom shifted. Clara's current and former teachers testified about her academic progress, social development, and the strong, secure attachment she clearly had to me. They described a happy, well-adjusted child who spoke of my mom, Nana, with love and trust. In my 20 years of teaching, I have rarely seen a parent as involved and attentive as Maya, her current teacher stated firmly. Clara is thriving under her care. She is confident, kind to other children, and academically motivated. These are all signs of a child who feels secure and loved. The school counselor who had been working with Clara provided professional testimony about the potential psychological impact of removing Clara from the only stable home she had ever known. Clara identifies Maya as her mother in every meaningful sense of the word, she explained. Forcing a change in her primary caregiver at this stage of development could result in significant attachment issues, anxiety, depression, and academic regression. The bond between them is profound and should not be disrupted without compelling reason. Finally, it was my turn to testify. I spoke from the heart about the 10 years of mothering Clara. From those first terrifying days of learning to care for an infant to watching her grow into the amazing 10-year-old she now is. I described our daily routines, our traditions, our support network of friends and chosen family. I explained how I had always kept the door open for Chloe to be part of Clara's life, saving the mementos and speaking of her birth mother in positive terms despite her absence. I have loved Clara as my own from the moment she came into my life, I concluded, my voice steady despite the emotion behind my words. Not because she is my biological child, but because she is my child in every way that matters. I have been there for every fever, every nightmare, every school project, every scraped knee, and every triumph. I am not perfect, and I cannot offer her the material advantages that Chloe and Ethan claim they can. But I can offer her the security of knowing she is loved unconditionally by the parent who chose to be there every single day of her life. Then came the moment we had prepared for. Sarah presented the sealed folder of evidence to the judge, requesting it be entered into the record. As Judge Albright reviewed the contents, her expression changed from professional neutrality to visible concern. She looked up sharply, first at Chloe and Ethan, then at my parents. "Counsel, approach the bench," she said. After a brief, intense discussion with the attorneys, she turned to Chloe. "Miss Davis, are you aware of the contents of this folder?" Chloe shook her head, looking confused. "No, Your Honor. It contains evidence directly contradicting several key claims in your petition," the judge continued, "including documentation that your husband has been actively searching for Clara's biological father, who recently came into a substantial inheritance." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Chloe's face paled as she turned to look at Ethan, whose expression had hardened. Furthermore, the judge continued, there is evidence that Mr. and Mrs. Davis, she nodded toward my parents, have been in regular contact with you for approximately 3 years, directly contradicting their sworn testimony that they were unaware of your whereabouts until recently. My father shifted uncomfortably. My mother stared at her hands. Finally, there are social media posts and private messages suggesting financial motives for this custody petition rather than the concern for Clara's well-being that has been presented to this court. The judge turned her gaze directly to my parents. Mr. and Mrs. Davis, did you knowingly provide false testimony to this court regarding your knowledge of your daughter Chloe's whereabouts? My father cleared his throat. We were trying to protect her privacy during her recovery, Your Honor. That is not what I asked, Judge Albright said sharply. Did you knowingly make false statements under oath? We may have misremembered some details, my mother offered weakly. Perjury is a serious offense, the judge reminded them before turning to Chloe. Miss Davis, were you aware that your husband was searching for Clara's biological father for a potential financial gain? Chloe's composure cracked. Ethan handled the legal aspects. He said it would strengthen our case to have the biological father's information. And did he mention the inheritance? The judge pressed. Not specifically, Chloe said, but her avoiding gaze suggested otherwise. Ethan leaned forward. Your Honor, if I may explain. Mr. Cooper, I suggest you confer with your attorney before speaking further, Judge Albright advised. The evidence suggests potential legal issues beyond the scope of this custody hearing. The courtroom atmosphere had transformed completely. What had begun as Chloe's carefully orchestrated performance had unraveled into exposed lies and questionable motives. Judge Albright called a brief recess to review the evidence more thoroughly, leaving both parties to sit in tense silence. When court resumed, the judge's expression was grave. Having reviewed the evidence and testimony presented today, I find several disturbing elements in the petitioner's case. What appears on the surface to be a mother seeking to reunite with her child seems upon closer examination to be motivated, at least in part, by financial considerations related to the biological father's recent inheritance. She continued, addressing Chloe directly. Miss Davis, while I believe you may have genuine feelings for your daughter, the timing and circumstances of your petition raise significant concerns about your motivations and judgment. The evidence suggests you have misrepresented several key facts to this court. Turning to me, her expression softened slightly. Miss Parker, the evidence clearly shows you have provided a loving, stable home for Clara throughout her life. The testimony of educational professionals and the documentation of your consistent care are compelling evidence of your commitment to her well-being. With a final look at her notes, Judge Albright delivered her ruling. It is the finding of this court that the best interests of the minor child, Clara Davis, are served by maintaining her current living situation with her aunt and legal guardian, Maya Parker. The petition for change of custody is denied. The relief that flooded through me was so intense, I nearly collapsed in my chair. Sarah squeezed my hand in silent congratulation as the judge continued, Miss Davis will be granted limited, supervised visitation to be arranged through family services, with the potential for expanded visitation in the future if deemed appropriate. Mr. and Mrs. Davis, she added, looking sternly at my parents, the court takes note of your apparent willingness to provide misleading testimony in this case. You are admonished that such behavior undermines the legal process designed to protect children like your granddaughter. As the formal proceedings concluded, I sat quietly, processing the outcome. We had won. Clara would stay with me where she belonged. The nightmare was over. Chloe approached me as I gathered my things, her eyes red from crying. I never wanted to hurt her, she said softly. Or you. It just got complicated. It didn't have to be, I replied, too emotionally drained for anger. You could have just been honest from the beginning about wanting to know her. She nodded, looking down. I know. Ethan thought. It doesn't matter what he thought. I simply nodded, unwilling to absolve her in that moment, and walked out of the courtroom toward the sunlight and the freedom to continue being Clara's mother without the shadow of uncertainty hanging over us. The moment I picked up Clara from her art teacher's house was one I will never forget. She ran to me, scanning my face anxiously for clues about the outcome. "What did the judge say? Do I still get to live with you?" I knelt down to her level, taking both her hands in mine. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "The judge said you stay with me. We are still a family, just like always." Her entire body sagged with relief as she threw her arms around my neck. "You promised. You cross your heart promised, and you kept it." "I will always keep my promises to you," I said, holding her tightly and breathing in the scent of her hair, allowing myself to fully feel the weight that had been lifted from my shoulders. "Always." That evening, we celebrated with pizza and ice cream, a simple feast that felt like the most luxurious meal imaginable. As Clara chatted excitedly about an art project, I marveled at her resilience and her capacity for joy despite the uncertainty she had been living with. The aftermath of the court case required careful navigation of new boundaries with my family. I arranged to meet my parents at a neutral location without Clara present, needing to address their betrayal directly. "How could you lie in court?" I asked them, not bothering with pleasantries. "How could you support taking Clara away from the only home she has ever known?" "We thought we were doing the right thing," my father said defensively. "Chloe is her mother. And I am her mother, too," I said firmly. "In every way that counts. You chose Chloe over both of us, and you lied to do it. I cannot trust you around Clara." "Now that is ridiculous," my mother protested. "We are her grandparents. Grandparents who are willing to traumatize her to get what you wanted." I countered. "If you want to be part of Clara's life going forward, there will be new rules. Supervised visits only, no undermining my parenting, no private conversations with Chloe about Clara, and absolutely no more lies." They balked at the restrictions, but I remained firm. The judge's ruling had given me the confidence to set the boundaries that should have been in place years ago. My parents eventually agreed, though with poor grace, to the new arrangement. Clara continued her sessions with a therapist, processing her complicated feelings about the court case, her birth mother, and the grandparents who had betrayed her trust. Through play therapy and art therapy, she began to express the anxiety and confusion that had been building for months. "Sometimes I feel like I have two moms, but also no mom," she confided during one session I was invited to join. "Chloe is my birth mom, but she didn't want me. You want me, but says you aren't my real mom. It's confusing. Family can be complicated," the therapist acknowledged. "But what matters most is who loves you and takes care of you every day. That's Nana," Clara said without hesitation. "She's my real mom because she chose me and stayed with me." Those words became a healing mantra for both of us. We began creating new traditions with the people who had stood by us through the ordeal, our chosen family of friends, neighbors, and colleagues who had testified to our bond and supported us through the legal battle. The supervised visitation with Chloe began cautiously. Ethan stopped attending after the first few sessions. His interest in Clara apparently diminishing once the financial motivation was removed. Chloe, however, continued to show up, gradually establishing a relationship with Clara that was more appropriate to their actual connection. She became something of an aunt figure, interested and caring, but not attempting to replace me as Clara's primary parent. With the custody issue resolved, I was able to focus on professional advancement again. I applied for and received a promotion to Health Services Coordinator for the school district, a position that came with better pay and continued family-friendly hours. The additional income allowed us to move to a slightly larger apartment with a small yard where Clara could plant the garden she had always wanted. Several months after the court case, Chloe asked to meet with me privately over coffee at the same cafe where we had reconnected a year earlier. She finally offered the apology I hadn't realized I was waiting for. "I was wrong," she said simply. "Not just about the custody case, but about everything. You are a better mother to Clara than I could ever have been. Even if I had been healthy from the beginning, you have something special, something real. I thought biology trumped everything, but watching you together these past months has shown me what true parenting looks like. Thank you for saying that, I replied, surprised at how much her acknowledgement meant to me. I want you to know I've ended things with Ethan, she continued. After everything came out in court about his motives, I couldn't trust him anymore. I'm focusing on my sobriety and my career and on building a healthy relationship with Clara as her birth mother, not trying to replace you. This shift in Chloe's perspective allowed us to gradually establish a more cooperative relationship for Clara's benefit. We would never be the close sisters we had been in childhood, but we found a workable peace as two women who cared about the same child in different ways. Clara continued to thrive as she grew. Her natural resilience helping her integrate the complicated reality of her family situation into a coherent narrative. She developed an interest in psychology, perhaps influenced by her own therapy experience, and began talking about maybe becoming a counselor someday to help other kids with confusing families. On the evening of Clara's 11th birthday, after a small party with her closest friends, she presented me with a homemade card that brought tears to my eyes. Inside, she had written, "To my mom who chose me every day for 11 years. Biology makes relatives, but love makes families. Thank you for being my real mom." Looking back on our journey, from that rainy night when a 3-month-old baby appeared on my doorstep to the confident 11-year-old standing before me, I realized that the unexpected detour my life had taken had led me to exactly where I was meant to be. I hadn't planned to become a mother at 24. Certainly not to my sister's abandoned child. But that unplanned beginning had given me the greatest gift of my life. The definition of family I had grown up with, the one my parents still clung to based on blood and obligation, had been replaced by a richer understanding. Family wasn't just who you were born to, but who you chose to love, and who chose to love you back, day after day, through challenges and joys alike. As Clara and I sat on our small balcony that evening, watching the sunset and talking about her dreams for the coming year, I felt a sense of peace that had been missing during the turmoil of the custody battle. We had weathered the storm together and emerged stronger. Our bond tested and proven unbreakable. "Nana," Clara said thoughtfully, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if Mom hadn't left me with you that night?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but then I think about all we would have missed, and I'm grateful things happened exactly as they did." She nodded, leaning her head against my shoulder. "Me too. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever had to fight for what you knew was right, even against your own family? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know."